This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
This is my iron. You're gonna acknowledge me.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to your AEW coverage for the week of 10/26, or excuse me, the Dynamite of 10/26. Per usual, I am Travis. I don't know why I said it like that. I'm not usually anybody else. You guys can follow me at TJH_7. For those of you who've been listening for a few weeks now, I started this, I don't even know what week I'm on, 3 or 4? 4? I think 4. I am a co-host of a different show, the Trav and Rigney Show, where we cover more sports-related thing. We do some silly things every now and again. We have our YouTube and TikTok where we do ridiculous things. We have a bunch of videos of us eating, the world's hottest wing sauces and torturing ourselves with the one chip challenge. But usually we try to stick to the sports thing, given it's football season at the moment. Go Eagles! We've been pretty busy with that on a weekly basis. But the one thing we don't do is a lot of wrestling coverage, which is one of my great passions. So I am very grateful to be able to bring you guys your AEW Dynamite coverage for this week. Just as a quick reminder, I am a diehard wrestling fan of all the different companies, including WWE. So I do my best to remain unbiased. And in fact, I say I try to remain unbiased, but I don't really think that I have a bias anyway. I tend to lean heavily towards the big two in AEW and WWE, but I don't really favor one over the other these days. I tend to think AEW puts out the better wrestling, and I tend to think that WWE puts out the better storytelling. But sometimes those two things are interchangeable. But nonetheless, let's get right into it. This Dynamite, I have dubbed, by the way, in my notes, as I told you guys before, I take notes every week as I'm watching, and I have written here in my notebook, I have dubbed this week's episode the MJF face turn episode. We talked about it last week, how I felt like this was MJF turning face. It wasn't me thinking like I was discovering some groundbreaking information that nobody else could see. Obviously, it's for a few weeks now, you could see something was coming with MJF. I wouldn't say it was a complete turn in this week's Dynamite, but the way that he did an interview with Renee, and we'll get to that portion of it, but he had a different tone about him. He was a lot more silly, and you can just tell based on how he's doing things that the face turn is coming. There's no denying that. But this week's episode kicked off with the Blackpool Combat Club versus the Jericho Appreciation Society. More specifically, Claudio and Wheeler Yuta versus Jericho and Daniel Garcia. This was a cool back and forth. You could have guessed, there was a ton of interference here. At one point, Jericho had a bat. The match was won by Claudio and Yuta, which actually I was kind of surprised at. I thought for sure, with the way that they'd been booking Jericho, that this was going to be another W for the Jericho Appreciation Society. Towards the end of the match, Jericho received a power bomb, but he had the bat in his hand like he was going to do something with that, while Aubrey had her back turned, the referee. And later, after Jericho had lost that match, he had tried to use the bat being in the ring as an excuse, which is such a heel move, and I love it so much. But Claudio and Yuta got the win here. After this match, though, there was an interview with Bryan Danielson, who I guess hasn't had a match since he lost to I'm blanking on to he lost to Moxley. Jeez, can't believe I forgot about that. For the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. He hasn't wrestled since then. I don't know. I feel like that caught me by surprise. I thought I've seen him wrestle since then. But either way, he hasn't, I guess. They mentioned it in this interview here. Danielson was having an interview with Renee, and then it was interrupted by Yuta, who was yelling at him for some reason. They're supposed to be friends, but he was yelling at him. Essentially, telling him, like, I'm not your child. I'm a grown ass man. Treat me like your own man. Claudio yelled at both of them, and told them that they're gonna have to talk this out like adults later that night. Shortly after this, a video package aired, pretty briefly, with the Elite. It was a nice video package where it was just showing members of the Elite at different moments of their AEW careers, and it just showed them sort of fading out of, almost like they were being burned off of the picture. I don't even know how to describe it properly. It was an interesting video package. I'm not sure what it is they're trying to accomplish there. Though I will say, I think it's an incredibly smart move to play off of, for example, if the goal here is to make it seem like, storyline-wise, you're pulling the Elite from AEW, which I know is just one of the very many conspiracies circling the Twitterverse about what's going on with the Elite. Storyline-wise, of course, nobody actually thinks the Elite's going anywhere. Just storyline-wise, though, one of the things that people think is going to happen is they're going to try to use them, the Punk leaving thing, and the sort of intertwining of real life into story. So we're going to see about that. But one of them was like, it would just, if they're going to go that route, this would be incredibly smart to use the heat that you had from this whole backstage drama, and sort of try to intertwine it with actual storytelling. So if the goal here is to make it seem like the Elite is somehow going to be removed from AEW, or they're going to be gone for a while, or they're somehow pulling away from AEW, and all storyline wise, of course, none of that's actually going to happen. It's a smart move to sort of use that, because obviously everybody knows about it. There's no point in ignoring the 2,000-pound elephant in the room. Elephants weigh more than 2,000 pounds, don't they? Either way, there's no point in ignoring the elephant in the room. Essentially, everybody is aware of the situation. It was one of the biggest wrestling storylines in the world, really. So, might as well steer into the skid, right? Next up was the number one contenders match for the AEW Tag Team Championship between Swerve and Our Glory and FTR. This, of course, was what I considered the match of the night, which is not surprising. The Swerve and Our Glory they're very, very good, and FTR, I believe, could have good wrestling matches with like blow up dolls, as we've seen like Kenny Omega do in the past. This was a great back and forth match. Swerve takes some great bumps, man. It's such a weird thing to be good at, but it makes certain maneuvers just look amazing. I shouldn't say it's a weird thing to be good at. It's a very important thing to be good at, especially considering like the power moves. And he took a power bomb that was just, it looked smooth. It looked impactful, right? Like powerful, but it just looked smooth. And I think a guy's ability to take a bump is a very underrated gift in this sort of industry. The Guns got involved here without actually crossing the barricade, which was weird. They were sort of interfering without anybody seeing, and Swerve and Our Glory did get the W here. So we get our rubber match between the Acclaimed, who were sitting. They came out with chairs. They get such a huge pop, right? Both Swerve and Our Glory came out, FTR came out, and then the Acclaimed's music hit, and man, they're so over, it's wild. But they had come out before the match and set up chairs and sat on the top of the stage, which I think is always great. So we'll get the rubber match between Swerve and Our Glory and the Acclaimed, which is fine. It'll be a great match. I am excited for the possibility though of FTR getting just hoarding all of the tag team championships from all these different wrestling promotions. I'm very very excited for that. Next, Renee interviews MJF at the top of the stage. This is sort of what I was talking about at the top of the show here. MJF came out. He had a different tone about him. You know what I mean? He warmed up to the Virginia crowd. He made fun of Jon Moxley in a very goofy way. His face turn is, I mean, it was pretty prevalent last week. He claimed that last week he jumped the gun a little bit by saying he was going to win everything clean. He's trying not to jump so quickly into being a face by saying things like, I said I was going to win clean, but come on, I can't do it that clean. But really, that's the goal here. He tried to dial back, the faceness of his promo from towards the end of the show last week. He was interrupted by Stokely Hathaway, and he basically told Stokely, like, listen, if you get involved in this match, I don't remember actually if he said I'm going to fire you. Do not get involved in this match, because he wants Moxley at 100% at Full Gear. But MJF is great as always. We love to hear MJF. He even mentioned himself that, like, his catchphrase is super over. Like, saying those words out loud, sort of breaking that third wall of kayfabe is great. I love that. But I can't remember exactly if he told Stokely Hathaway that he was going to fire him if they got involved later that night. A little bit of foreshadowing here on my part. But either way, the next match was, and maybe you guys caught this, by the way. The next match was Bryan Danielson versus Sammy Guevara. And maybe you guys caught this, but I was pretty sure at the top of the show when they were announcing the matches for the night, they said for the first time ever, Bryan Danielson and Sammy Guevara. And then in the promo package where Jericho was complaining about how there was a bat in the ring when they lost earlier to the Blackpool Combat Club, Sammy said, I'm going to kick Danielson's ass again. And I was thinking to myself, like, didn't they say they hadn't, or this was going to be the first time? I couldn't remember if I'd have seen him in the ring before. I have such a terrible memory. So maybe you guys caught that. Somebody can school me on what the deal with that was. Something was a little off there with that. Sammy's very good. He's very agile. Bryan Danielson is who he is. We know he is one of the best in the entire world. The man he could be in any position and within seconds be just absolutely destroying you with some kind of submission. I'm convinced that you could be somewhere, you could be like sitting Indian style on the mat on the opposite side of the ring, and he could somehow leap from the other turnbuckle and within seconds have you in some ridiculous submission move that you'd be tapping out to or falling asleep to. Danielson is just unbelievably technically sound. Well, this was a nice back and forth. Danielson got the W. I don't think taking a loss to Danielson does any real harm to your credibility. He's just that good. He has sort of that aura about him that it's like, it doesn't really matter if you lose to Danielson. It's almost expected at this point. Unless you're Moxley, in which case you don't lose to Danielson. The next match was Jamie Hayter versus Rio. Another great women's match, no doubt about it. Jamie Hayter won this match. Britt Baker ringside, of course, and Toni Storm appeared at the very end of the match, and after when Hayter's music was going off, and Toni Storm appeared at the top of the stage, and they had what I like to call a ramp ring stare down, where somebody's in the ring and somebody's standing on the ramp, and they just stare down at each other, and they're not actually saying anything as one person's music plays, and they're just having a ring ramp stare down, or ramp ring, however you want. I haven't decided how I want to say that yet. Then there was a Darby Allin video package where he was sort of explaining why Sting hasn't been around that much. And he claimed, he hasn't, said he hasn't been happy, and that he told Sting, I'm not happy with where I am, I'm not happy with who I am, and I want to just crawl in a hole and disappear. And Sting said, you can't do that. And then this is the story that Darby Allin was telling. And essentially, Darby Allin told Sting, well, if I'm gonna do this, then I need to prove that I can do this without you. And so that's him explaining the absence of Sting recently. I'm not sure what the real reason is, the non-storyline reason. There may not even be one. Sting is he's getting old. I don't know if you guys know this, but Sting's like super duper old. Or old to be anywhere near a wrestling ring. Not very, very old in the grand scheme of things. Though not a spring chicken either. Still not even in the grand scheme of life, he's not very young. So he may just be taking time. The guy's he's been around a lot. So good for him. And then finally, to wrap up the show, and we've been sort of skating through this episode, was the AEW World Championship match between Moxley and Penta. I told you guys last week that I thought that the Lucha Bros were the best tag team in the entire world. And as an extension to that statement, Penta by himself is absolutely fantastic. He hit Moxley with some chops here that echoed. They had a pretty brutal match. I expected that, though, with these two. This was a match where obviously you knew Penta was going to lose, and sort of AEW wasn't even really trying to fool you, though. They were never trying to convince you that he wasn't going to lose. This was more about the post-match stuff. But in between the bells, though, the match was very good. A nice back and forth. Penta is very good. He of course, he got some flashy moves over on Moxley, and Moxley did his signature stuff. Moxley, that brainbuster he does looks dangerous, and I'm genuinely surprised that these companies allow moves. I know the WWE had banned like pile drivers a while back, and I think occasionally they do something similar to like pile drivers, but these moves where the guys can land at the top of their head and or like on their neck, or where their necks are more vulnerable. Oh my goodness. So I was surprised that he does it pretty effortlessly. It looks very good when he does it. So I guess maybe certain guys are trusted to do it. But either way, this was a great match. Moxley got the W. There was a near pinfall here. It was a super close 2 count. I'm talking, I thought that the ref's hand hit the mat before Moxley broke out of it. It was very close. I don't remember seeing the replay and just how close it was. He may have gotten the shoulder up, but it was damn near a botch. That's how close it was for a 2 count. And then after the match, after Moxley's winning, he looked like he was going to pay some respect to Penta, and then he just gets absolutely mollywopped by the Firm. They came out of nowhere. They just in numbers, like 6 of them, they just come out and they just destroyed Moxley. And then the cameras cut to the back, and the Blackpool Combat Club was locked in their locker room because they were having that adult conversation they said they needed to have. And so you're like, oh crap, what's going on with Moxley? He's out here getting his ass kicked. And MJF comes out, and you're like, oh, MJF, is he going to make the save? And he's sort of like, you could see him mentally struggling with the idea that, I told these clowns I wanted him 100%, but also, this is going to be good for me if he's not 100% at full gear. He looks like he was having that internal struggle about it. So, he came out to the top of the stage, and he sort of paced back and forth for a second, then he went in the back, and then was back to the ass kicking for Moxley. And then 5 seconds later, here comes MJF sprinting down to the ring. He gets in the ring, pushes all of the Firm away, just pushes them all, and then he looks at Stokely Hathaway, and he's like, "You're fired!" And he yells at him, and then Stokely Hathaway sort of yells or laughs at him, and then MJF gets his ass kicked. They sort of turn their attention from Moxley to MJF, and he fought back a little bit, but Morrissey's a giant man, and MJF got slammed through a table, and it was more. It's like as the show went on, you got more and more evidence that this face turn is coming for MJF. And I think they tested out when they have MJF come out and cut like giddier promos where he's just being a little bit more goofy, because they just want to see how the fans are going to react to the face MJF. So I think we're genuinely, I shouldn't even say, we're for sure getting the face turn. I don't know exactly when it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be when he wins the title. He may not even beat Moxley, but that face turn is coming, and it's coming soon. And which I actually am going to be looking forward to it. I love MJF as a heel, but I'm very, very excited to see what he can do as a face. That was the close of the show. It closed out with MJF getting put through a table by Morrissey, and they sort of the firm stood tall there. I know I'm not the only one that's pumped for it. So that was it for Dynamite. Another great show as per usual. The Full Gear is, I think it's the 19th. They said. I keep forgetting the date. I apologize, guys. But I'm very excited to cover that. It's gonna be such a good show. I can't wait. I honestly can't wait. Next Saturday, I think, is Crown Jewel. For WWE, people are less than thrilled for that pay-per-view because usually it means nothing as far as storylines are concerned. But this isn't about WWE. This is about AEW. I apologize. I didn't get to Rampage this week. I recorded a little late in the week, as will probably be how I do things going forward. Just trying to get my scheduling down a little bit better. And also, guys, I wanted to apologize to you. Last week, I listened back to each show that I do, and you could hear a buzzing in the audio, and that is obviously that's not Matt's fault. That is my fault. That buzzing is my laptop fan. I use a gaming laptop for everything, so the fan runs incredibly loud sometimes, and I thought by using the audio equipment I was using, it wouldn't pick up on the fan, and it did. And when I played it back the first time before I had sent it out, I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear it in the playback. But I listened to the show again on Spotify just to sort of hear it again, and I heard it the whole time, and it bugged the crap out of me. So I apologize to you guys. I apologize for any mysterious white noise you may hear in the background. I try to eliminate all of that. I do record this show from like a home studio type of situation, whereas I do my other show, my buddy doing it in a different process. So I'm getting down mastering this solo show thing. I sort of thrive on give and take. If you guys couldn't tell, I get pretty long-winded, and I rarely take breaths when I talk. But I appreciate you guys sticking with me this far. This is so fun. I love watching wrestling and then just sort of talking at some audio equipment, and hopefully people listen to it and enjoy it. If there's anything you guys don't enjoy, or I have an opinion that you absolutely hate, please feel free to reach out to me and tell me. I love to get into it with people on Twitter. My Twitter name is TJH_7. My little profile picture there is just a caricature of me. I'm struggling with words today, guys. Don't judge me. But yeah, that's the end of it, guys. I appreciate you sticking it out with me, and I can't wait to do many, many more. Check me out on the Trav and Rigney show if you get a shot too. If you like what I'm doing here, give me a listen over there. Let me know what you think. All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.